This has been one tough week, hasn't it? Every week since November 2 years ago has seemed tough. Every week has seen some knock against our Unitarian Universalist principles and values, but this week was something else. So I get Washington Post notifications on my smartphone. They pop up and they say things. Friday morning, I woke up to this notification. In the fight over Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation, the only consensus is that the Senate and the nation have hit a new low. And that is truly what we saw this past Thursday in the events unfolding in Washington before the Senate Judiciary Committee, when Dr. Christine Blasey Ford described her allegation of being sexually assaulted by Supreme Court Justice nominee Brett Kavanaugh. For so many women around this country, it was an excruciatingly painful ordeal. For every survivor who goes public with their story, there are hundreds of others who never will. Dr. Ford's brave voice, the other day, her brave voice was the voice of millions. Millions of survivors are remembering their own traumas and how their lives were changed in an instant by sexual violence. On Thursday, Acting Associate Minister Terrence Strauss created a vigil space here at the Treehouse for folks who needed to step out of isolation and be known and be loved. Taryn tells me that 2 women came to the vigil who had never come to UUCA before, and their rape stories came pouring out of them the second they laid eyes on her. I know that we are a country of due justice, where it is not fair to be pronounced guilty without due process. The FBI investigation that is underway will help, hopefully, with that. But my main point here is that we cannot allow male discomfort to distract us from the real focus right now, which is how women continue to be treated as second-class citizens by other men, and also by some other women, too. Just imagine what America would do to a female judge who yelled and cried her way through Senate testimony. That's the other side of things. How Kavanaugh responded to the allegation with anger and tears and absolute denial, and also conspiracy theory accusations against the Democrats for setting up a so-called search and destroy mission via Dr. Ford's accusations. What we did not see was thoughtfulness, which is what we want from a Supreme Court judge. Any thoughtful person can put 2 and 2 together. It is well known that Kavanaugh was a heavy drinker, and that he bragged about his sexual conquests in his yearbook, and that boys of his generation tended to see sexual assaults as mere horseplay. Put 2 and 2 together, and it seems reasonable that he did, in fact, do what Dr. Ford says he did. But he just doesn't remember because he was stone drunk at the time. Because it was just horseplay, just fun that bros have together. Some kind of fun, right? That ends up being, as Dr. Ford says, indelible in the hippocampus. Remember her saying that? Indelible in the hippocampus is the laughter, and they're having fun at my own expense. We could just go on and on. Ugh! But the Washington Post was not done with me yet. As I was devouring news about the Supreme Court hearings, another notification popped up on my smartphone, and it read, "The Trump administration sees a 7-degree Fahrenheit rise on global temperatures by 2100. Now let me ask you, do you know what this means if it's true? Do you know what this means? Scientists say that if global temperatures rise just 5 more degrees Fahrenheit, then what we will have in effect is a totally different planet with extinction consequences comparable to what happened 65 million years ago when a giant asteroid collided with the Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs. If that's just 5 degrees, what's going to happen when it gets to 7 degrees. But the Trump administration projection also means this. They are assuming that the planet's fate is already sealed. Their investments, that investments in carbon neutral sources of energy are not worth our time. They are not worth our energy. That the business as usual way, which devours our planet, despoils our planet, it's the way we should continue going. Once again, we could go on and on. Y'all join me with that. But right now, I want to stop and I want simply to ask you a fill in the blank question. When I consider the fate of the world today, I feel, right? That's where you get to fill in the blank with a feeling word. So I wonder what your feeling word is. Is it overwhelmed? Is it discouraged? Is it scared? Is it angry as hell? The Washington Post notifications, the New York Times notifications, the whatever news sources you read and happen to trust notifications, they just keep coming endlessly, don't they? Endlessly. And scholar and spiritual activist Joanna Macy hits the nail on the head when she says that feelings of uncertainty and despair are the pivotal psychological reality of our time. All of us in this room are alarmed about the future we are headed to. And then she says that as a result, we often hear comments like, let's just not go there. It's too depressing. And don't dwell on the negative. The problem with this, she continues, is that it closes down our conversations and our thinking. How can we even begin to tackle the mess we're in if we consider it too depressing to talk about? Yet when we do face the mess, when we do let in the dreadful news of the multiple tragedies unfolding in our world, well, that can feel overwhelming. We may wonder whether we can do anything about it at all. This is the pivotal psychological reality of our day. And there has got to be a better way through. There has got to be. And that is what our new worship series is all about. The active hope way, a better way through the mess that we are in. And it begins with clarity. It begins with a little clarity about that little thing with feathers that the poet Emily Dickinson talked about. Hope. Hope. Hope can be passive in the sense that our preferred outcome is likely to happen. We know that up front, and so we are hopeful and we act accordingly. But there is another kind of hope, one that is more about our desire for what we want the world to be like and our acting upon that desire without any upfront guarantees. Passive hope is about waiting around for someone on the outside to guarantee the result, and that's when we act. But active hope is a feeling deep inside, deep within you, that you are alive, that you are in this particular place and time, and the only thing you need to do to concern yourself with is what to do next. Refusing to prejudge, not needing to know the effects of your actions up front. You don't need optimism. Just get out there. Just keep showing up and showing up and showing up no matter what. It is a practice, the active hope way. What is beautiful about Joanna Macy's work is that she shows us what the parts of the practice are. And each sermon in this series is going to articulate each of these parts. Starting with, as she puts it, following the thread of adventure. It's really a way of reframing what's going on in the largest of senses, tuning your imagination so you can comprehend the big picture of what is unfolding and so see the details with greater meaningfulness. And I tried to do some of this past Wednesday when I was at the state capitol at a press conference, speaking on behalf of an environmentalist initiative called Stand for Forests, which is supported by over 250 national organizations, elected officials, and thought leaders from across our country. The essential message is that standing forests are crucial, not only to mitigating the impact of natural disasters, but to reducing the carbon dioxide burden in the atmosphere, protecting diverse habitats, providing clean water and air. And what I said before I got specifically to the part about standing forests addressed the big picture meaning of the huge crisis of climate change that we're in, what that crisis represents for us. I said that we don't have to be afraid of crisis. The human species was born out of crisis. We know crisis. Some people, when there's just not enough crisis in their lives, they like to create some just from getting bored. There is a reason why every culture on this planet, all places, all times, tells some version of the hero's journey, which begins in circumstances that are ordinary, and then crisis hits, which is at the same time the call to adventure. And the hero goes, and that hero encounters dangers and strange things, and it meets new friends, and it fights jabberwocks of all kinds, all sorts of monsters, and then they find what they were seeking, a knowledge, a treasure, a changed state of being, and then they return home, and they are never the same again. Nothing is ever the same again. Crisis is in our bones. It is in our mythology, and that tells us that it's coming. It's arising, that hero instinct. It's arising from out of our deepest impulses. Odysseus and his Odyssey. Demeter in search of her daughter Persephone. Arjuna in the chariot with Krishna. Buddha under the bow tree. Jesus Christ. Frodo on his way to Mordor, ring of power in hand. Seeley in the color purple, all that she endures. Luke Skywalker against the Empire and Darth Vader. Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, Ron Weasley in the fight against he who must not be named. There's a lot of layers to what I just said right there, if you've been coming around the past couple of years. Fight against Voldemort, Katniss Everdeen, right? And the Hunger Games. Yesterday and today and forever, we will be telling stories like this because we love them. We thrill to them. They feel realer than real to us. And it is because we are no stranger to crisis. We do not have to be afraid. We do not have to step away from crisis. We step towards it. We are stronger and braver than we know. And that is a bit of what I said at Wednesday's press conference. I was speaking for the trees. I'd make Dr. Seuss proud. But what I was doing was I was following the thread of adventure. If you ever feel, says Joanna Macy, that the odds are stacked against you and doubt whether you are up to the challenge, then you join a time-honored tradition of protagonists in this genre. Heroes almost always start out seeming distinctly underpowered. But what makes the story, she goes on to say, is the way the central characters are not put off. Instead, their tale sets them on a quest in search of allies and tools and wisdom needed to improve their chances. We can think of ourselves as on a similar journey, the journey of active hope. But now, what are some of the ways in which we can improve our chances? And for answers, I found myself looking into something that might seem entirely unrelated. Video games. Now stay with me here. What is understandable, or rather undeniable, is that people love video games. The Entertainment Software Association, an industry coalition, reports that 42% of Americans play video games for at least 3 hours every week. 3/4 of players are adults, and 44% are female. Jane McGonigal, a game designer who argues that we can learn strategies from video games to help us in our real-world lives, says that the amount of time people around the world have collectively put into World of Warcraft. How many of you are familiar with World of Warcraft? That's like a super popular online gaming platform. Okay, maybe not many fans of World of Warcraft. But the point is, she says, 5.93 million years. That is the amount of time that people have poured into World of Warcraft collectively from around the world. And then she goes on to say that this is roughly the time since our ancestors first stood erect. And then she says, imagine if that level of engagement had been turned to real world problems. Can you imagine? Which is what her book, Super Better, is all about. In the introduction, she shares a personal story of her horrendous case of post-concussion syndrome after hitting her head in 2009. She suffered almost near constant vertigo, headaches, nausea. She had trouble speaking and remembering names. She was depressed, but determined to recover, she had an aha moment and she tapped into what she knew best, video game design. She renamed herself Jane the Concussion Slayer, and she went looking for allies in family and friends. And she also sought out power-ups, which she defines as quick actions that make a person feel better and more energized. In short, she tapped into the ancient archetypal hero myth, but gave it an up-to-date video game design nature. She said, I felt like I was finally doing something to get better, not just lying around and waiting for my brain to hurry up and heal itself. She was practicing active hope, video game style. And as we live out our active hope journeys together, as we witness all the ways that women are treated like second-class citizens, as we witness all the ways that people in power are throwing in the towel in the face of climate change, as we witness everything that creates anxiety about what our future is going to be like and brings us deeply, deeply into the pivotal psychological reality of our time, as we do all of that, I want to ask, what's your secret hero identity going to be? You probably didn't expect that you'd be asked that this morning. Secret identities, says Jane McGonigal, can remind you daily of the personal strengths that you bring to the challenge, that you bring to the fight, or the strengths that perhaps you're not so good at, but you want to get better at, because they resonate with you. You want to know my secret identity? Thanks for saying, no, not really. You're here, you're okay, it's good. Do not tell anybody, it's secret. It is Super Tortoise Man. I want to be Super Tortoise Man. For Super Tortoise Man, crisis is happening all over, but Super Tortoise Man has got really thick skin, and all that stuff just bounces off. Super Tortoise Man has a shell that is magical, meaning that it can expand to become as large as is needed to carry important issues and important people, to carry them where they need to go. Super Tortoise Man, above all, is relentless. He may be slow, but he knows where he needs to go. I may be slow, I know where I need to go, and just like the song, Wo Ya Ya, I believe we will get there. Heaven knows how we will, but we know it. What is your active hope secret identity, secret hero identity? That's going to express that hope. And then there's this, power-ups. Now, Pac-Man had power pellets, right? Mario and Donkey Kong had a what? A hammer. Okay. Link in The Legend of Zelda had fairies. And as for what we have in the real world, to stimulate a mood boost, power-ups could include talking with a friend, playing with your pet, exercising, taking a walk, sending someone a gratitude note, or watching a funny animal video on YouTube. I mean, sure. Washington Post notifications, they just need to be balanced out with funny cat videos. I'm just saying. There's lots to say about Jane McGonigal's work. But to close, I want to take us back to our video clip from a while ago, and it's from one of my all-time favorite adventure movies, right? Princess Bride. The Peter Falk character is the grandfather who comes to visit the grandson who is sick and just happens to be playing video games to pass the time. Grandfather brings a book with him. Grandson says, "Does it have any sports in it?" And grandfather says, "Fencing, fighting, torture, poison, true love, hate, revenge, giants, hunters, bad men, good men, beautifulest ladies, snakes, spiders, pain, death, brave men, cowardly men, strongest men, chases, escapes, lies, truths, passion, miracles." If God exists, and if God is anything, God brings life to us in just this way, in all sorts of varied forms. And in this list, we need to include climate change. In this list, we need to include misogyny and sexual abuse. We need to include all that stuff. And let us not forget the parts about goodness and bravery and truth and passion and miracles. Let us not forget the part about active hope and how each of us has a secret hero identity to bring to the challenges of life, and maybe all the terrible problems get solved. Maybe they don't. But no one is ever going to say of us, no one is ever going to say of us that we step back, that we stepped away. They're going to say of us, we showed up. They're going to say, we showed up. We showed up. That's what they're going to say. Amen.